I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I can't help but take a much more comprehensive approach to human development. So you can come to me as as a client with a particular issue you want to work on, but my mind expands beyond that particular issue to help you develop the capacities, the skills, and the understanding to deal with whatever comes your way, not just that particular issue. And I've created a 4-pillar program. So I work on the physiological side of my clients, the psychological side of my clients, the social side, and the environmental side. And I help them dial all these things in so they can not only survive in their life, but thrive in their life.
Welcome to the Thought Leader Revolution with Nikki Ballou. Join the revolution. There's never been a better time in history to speak your truth, find your freedom, and make your fortune. Each week, we interview the world's top thought leaders and learn the secrets of how they built a 6 to 7-figure practice. This episode has been brought to you by eCircleacademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nikki Ballou. And boy, do we have an amazing, exciting guest lined up for you today. Today's guest is a near and dear friend of mine. He is one of the true renaissance men of the thought leader world. The one, the only, the legendary Michael Ostrolenk. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Nikki. I love the introduction.
Great to have you here, my man. So,
thanks, buddy.
Michael, the folks that listen to this show, they are thinkers, they are seekers, they want to learn. And they're not here for me, I'm here every week, they're here for you. But before they can open themselves up to you, they need to get to know you. Tell us your backstory. How'd you get to be the great Michael Ostrolenk?
Well, I appreciate asking the backstory. Education-wise, I'm trained and licensed as a marriage and family therapist in the late 90s. Transpersonal psychology is my graduate studies, postgraduate studies in somatic or health psychology. So kind of integrating body, mind, and spirit, if you want to look at it that way, into my work with individuals, couples, and groups. I spent about a decade working at SealFit as a master coach, helping them launch various programs, including running their Inner Circle, which was their mastermind group, and helping them launch their coach and training program based on the Unbeatable Mind program, which I helped Mark Divine, who I know has been on your on your show, develop as well. Spent a lot of time in the space of integrative or optimizing medicine. I'm a director of human resilience at Peron Zoe here in Austin, Texas. I'm presently in Austin, Texas. Been nomadic for almost a year and a half, but I'm spending a little bit more time here in Austin. So, psychology is pretty much my background, although, and you know this because we've had this really cool conversations, I also spent about 20 years doing public policy work, a lot of it in the national security space, foreign policy, defense reform, and things along those lines too. So kind of two parallel paths. And both were full-time jobs, and I always did the full-time jobs. But I retired from policy work right before COVID.
So I'm really personally very curious about your policy work because that's an area that's near and dear to my heart. So how'd you get into that, and why was that important to you? And let's dig into that a bit.
Yeah, so for me, it's an interesting story of trying to understand why people do what they do. So like taking my psychology work and applying it to the political policy level. So I moved from the West Coast to the East Coast. I was a licensed therapist in California. I moved to Maryland. I was going to move my license over. Literally, Maryland just passed a law for reciprocity. I was waiting for the regulations to be written. And during this time, I was invited by Ken Wilbur. He's an integral theorist to join his think tank. So I went out to Colorado a good bit and spent a lot of time with Ken.
Genius. Ken Wilbur's a genius, man. Let's be honest. He's not just an integral theorist. He's one of the true thought leaders of the age.
Amen. Not everyone knows his name. They should, and I really appreciate the fact that you do know his name. So, I was part of the early part of the Integral Institute. There's a whole story there. But while I was there, I met a woman. Her name is Betsy. And she's like, you need to meet my partner. His name is Jim, who's part of the political branch or the policy branch of the Integral Institute. I was at the time in the education branch because I had built out some graduate level education programs when I was in California. And I got introduced to Ken by Don Beck and got introduced that way and brought into the fold. But I got introduced to this lady named Betsy. She's like, you need to meet my partner, Jim. So when I was back in DC, still waiting for the regulations to be written, I sat down with Jim. And Jim was one of the more thoughtful human beings I've ever met in terms of like policy and cultural shifts and history and things like that. And he's like, hey, do you want to do some work with me while you're waiting for while you're waiting for the license to be transferred so you can be a therapist? I'm like, sure. So I started, I was coaching, but also I figured I'd do a little bit of work with Jim. And Jim's work is healthcare. So like it was health freedom related issues, like, access to natural medicines, access to alternative medicine doctors, vaccine choice, like people should not be forced or coerced to take vaccines. Those kind of are the issues that Jim worked on. So I started working with him on those. And it led to some really interesting explorations. So it was a Tuesday, and I got a call from a woman, Sue Blevins. She ran the Institute for Privacy or Institute for Health Freedom, was I think what her thing was. She left a message for Jim. I happened to answer the phone, and she's like, what do you know about HIPAA? Nothing. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. She goes, it's a disclosure rule. It's not a privacy rule. I want to meet with Jim and talk to him about it. I was like, cool. All right. So I'll set that up. So we sat down for coffee or tea, whatever. And she explained what HIPAA really was versus what the popular press or doctors would tell you. And I'm like, holy moly, it really is a disclosure rule. All these people can access your medical records without your consent. And I said, well, who's doing anything about this? And she's like, well, besides us here in her institute, she's like, not too many people. And my mind always goes, I either fill holes, and I think comprehensively, I'm like, oh, well, there's no one doing it. I'll do it. So by Friday, I had created what's called the Medical Privacy. Yeah. So that was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. By Friday, I created what's called the Medical Privacy Coalition. We had dozens and dozens of groups, left and right, conservative, liberal, libertarian, progressive, in it, opposing HIPAA as it stood. And it even got to the point where we took a case to the Supreme Court. I mean, so we got really, really active, organized. We lost. The Supreme Court said we had no standing. It's a whole other interesting conversation. But that led me more deeply from healthcare, health freedom, into privacy. I can keep going if you want. That's cool.
Yeah, dude. So this is fascinating.
Okay, cool. So I learned about HIPAA, and then I started learning about the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act had been passed, as a measure against Al Qaeda and 9/11 attacks. Patriot Act, a great name, but if you actually look into it and you support the Fourth Amendment like I do, privacy, you're like, man, there's a couple of provisions in there which are problematic. I think it was 215, 505, and 702, or three of the provisions which we found problematic. And I was talking to some of my friends in the privacy space, and I was like, who's doing what, where, and when? And there at the time, there's ad hoc coalitions, like left and right would come together for very particular issues, but there wasn't a permanent one. So I'm like, well, I fill holes. Something needs to get done. So I literally created what was called at the time with a couple of colleagues of mine, Brad Jansen and Plummer, the Liberty Coalition, which ended up being a coalition of like 70, 80 groups, left and right. And we first started out on the Patriot Act. And this is the funniest thing. So I was invited to join two senators and a couple other privacy people on a media event on the Capitol. And so we started talking about the Patriot Act, and one of the senators turned to me in front of everyone and said, hey, you really want to appreciate what the Liberty Coalition has done. You guys are doing yeoman's work. And I'm like, hey, I was like, thank you, sir, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, holy shit. And the reason I'm saying holy shit is because this is in front of the press. And I do the work, but I hadn't created the infrastructure yet. So literally I was running around and doing these things and organizing these things with our partners, but we had no website. Those kind of things hadn't been built yet because I was too busy doing the work. And I was like, oh, shoot. And with the press there, they're going to start looking things up. Like, who's this Michael Ostrolenk and who's the Liberty Coalition? So, like, within 24 hours, I had to turn around and build a website, which is fine. I mean, it's pretty easy. But, cart before the horse. So we worked on Patriot Act reform. We worked against Real ID, the National Identification System, if you look at it from a privacy point of view. Worked against secure flight, wide variety of different, things that were going on at the federal level, which were intrusions into the Fourth Amendment. And then I started asking the question, this is either the hole filling or the curiosity. I was like, why are we building a surveillance state? Pretty much that's what we're building. The surveillance state or the police state. The technology, the laws, the regulations are all coming together nicely for the surveillance state to be constructed over a short period of time. I was like, why are we doing that? And I thought, well, probably it's because of our foreign policy. Our foreign policy is not very good from my perspective. And just for argument, just for your listening audience sake, I'm an old school conservative. Limited government, free markets, individual liberty, rule of law. Those are kind of my four pillars of how I think of government and those kind of things. Well. Old school conservative, more libertarianish leaning. But I was like, I was thinking about our foreign policy, and there's very few foreign interventions that we've done that were actually declared wars. So I'm like, we're not really following the Constitution. So I started thinking about our foreign policy. So what I did is I spent 6 months studying everything I could, left and right, conservatives, liberals, libertarians, progressives, on foreign policy history, present day stuff, so I can get a clearer picture and understanding of why we do what we do. And then I found people to hire me to do work in that space. And that's kind of my story, because once I did that for a little while, I thought, well, why does our foreign policy suck from my perspective? Well, because our education system, it's a technical term. It's because our education system sucks. Our American people have no idea about what the U.S. government does abroad, or anything that's going on abroad, let alone what the U.S. government's involved in abroad. So I'm like, I need to study the U.S. education system. So I spent another 6 months studying education philosophy, education history, everything from left to right. And then I found people to hire me to work in that space. So, my whole policy world, and then it eventually moved into the national security, the defense reform, cybersecurity, which is how I kind of ended my career. And I can get into that in a moment. But that's kind of how I, kind of got into that area. Is just like, why is that happening? I need to understand it. I understood it well enough that people hire me to do something in it. Then I try to understand what led to that problem and some, more iterations of the same. And then I just fell in love with national security, foreign affairs, defense reform. So I got hired to do a defense reform project, which would include what weapon systems is a taxpayer paying for, which our warfighters do not need. Like the F-35 was one of our bugaboos. Littoral combat ship, we're supporting an audit of the Pentagon. I happen to know the comptroller of the Pentagon, so it was easy to work with he and his office. Those kind of questions were being asked, and some of the stuff I was working on, election security, the fact that there's so many vulnerabilities at different levels of the election system for foreign and state actors. I was a policy fellow at the Center for Cyber Influence Operations Studies, which was an opportunity for me to understand how state and non-state actors use social media to socially engineer populations or to recruit in terms of Al-Qaeda or ISIS and stuff. So I just got really fortunate to either find the right people that I could ask the right questions with, or the right people that invite me in to do some work with them. And I'll give you one last example, and then we can close down the policy shop if you want. And I shared this with you recently, I think. I gave a talk on a panel on the future of counterterrorism in the U.S., counterterrorism strategy. And I was with some agency guys, CIA, former special operations guys, and there's me. And what was funny to me retrospectively, even probably at the moment, was why am I here? I'm literally formally unqualified to do most of the stuff I did in the policy space. I don't have a doctorate degree in whatever the policy area was. I did not work for the agency or the FBI or any of these, IC, the intelligence community or law enforcement agencies. But, I guess I was fortunate enough to be a fast learn on my own, gain enough knowledge, gain enough respect from people who are working from those spaces or used to work in those spaces to be invited to participate in kind of these discussions. So it's really cool to be invited to talk about counterterrorism. And I did. So I had tons of opportunities like that, which, like I said, I wasn't formally trained to do so, but for gods were smiling upon me, and I had opportunities to hopefully influence policy in a good direction.
I love that you decided to go down these roads, and they all just kind of naturally led to each other. And we're living in a time in the world where having citizens that are thoughtful about government policy and get involved in it to move government policy in a way that's consistent with freedom and with ensuring a maximal interpretation of liberty for the body politic is super relevant and super important. If anything, I know, we work together and we want to get your business going, and I'm thrilled and excited we're doing that. But I love that you've done this, and I think it ought to be something you continue to do, even if it's like a secondary thing that you do, especially hopefully once the current administration is voted out of office and the new administration gets to come in, and we have a more conservative approach to governance and to developing U.S. government policy so that it's consistent with maximizing individual liberty. Because in my opinion, currently, what we have is we've got a bunch of, there's no better way to put this, but doctrinaire Marxists. They're not even progressives. They're actual Marxists. They're interested in using the methods and techniques of the rabble-rousing thinker Saul Alinsky to shut down free thinkers and to create a quasi-fascist / Marxist view to governance in the United States. And the great Ronald Reagan once said that if fascism ever comes to the U.S., it'll come under the guise of liberalism. And at the time, I thought, what does he mean by that? But now I know exactly what he means by that.
Yeah, and I just put out, because I did this for 20 years, that the Republicans suck, if you want to use that clinical term, like the Democrats do. I remember when they're not in power, they talk about limited government, free markets, and they talk about debt. And they're in power, the debt rises, government grows, cost of government expands, the power of the state expands. I mean, you get your tax cuts, which is great. I'm friends, and I love Grover Norquist for his tax work. That's awesome. But you got to pay for it eventually because they're spending it down the road with debt. So you get a tax cut and China pays for present day cost of government. You got to pay China back for the cost of government. So yeah, you get a tax cut. It's cool. But Republicans are pretty bad too when it comes to the issues I care about: limited government, free markets, individual liberty, and rule of law.
They have been. There's no question about it. And it's my belief that things need to be different, and I'm hopeful that they are different. But we'll see. We'll have to see what happens over the next little while.
Course.
But it's really cool to speak to a thoughtful fellow who's been involved in the trenches of this sort of work.
Well, and let me share this with you because I know you'll love this too, because I think we might have joked around a little bit about the Federal Reserve and fiat currency and, how we pay for everything, pay in quotes. One of the, I didn't mention in terms of some of the efforts I either led or co-led, one of them was an audit of the Federal Reserve. I was hired to help organize with my friend on the left, because I was the right guy, a left-right effort in support of the audit after the 2008 collapse. And what's fascinating to me is like we is pushing a rock up a hill, because the financial services folks opposed it. The members of Congress who were paid off by the Federal Reserve and the banks in certain ways opposed it. So it was like pushing a rock up a hill. It was an effort Ron Paul has supported forever. But at the time, we had Rand Paul in the Senate. We had Bernie Sanders in the Senate, and we had a couple of guys left and right in the House who were kind of leading efforts with us. And we finally got it passed. And this really blew my mind. Found out that the Federal Reserve loaned out $14 trillion to foreign and domestic banks and businesses during the collapse, 2008, 2009 collapse. And I was like, that's a lot of money. And I was expecting I didn't want riots in the street, but I was expecting like some kind of like revolution. Like people are going to uprise. Like, what the hell is this Federal Reserve thing? And what are they doing? Because if you know about fiat currency, you know that they print more money and it just devalues the dollar, hoping that people would wake up to that fact. And, there's a couple of stories out there. Rand Paul did a release. I know Bernie Sanders did a release, and a couple of stories with like Federal Reserve, audit was released, but not too much. And it was really sad, considering that the American people fought a revolutionary war against the English, many, many years ago for so much less. And like, we put up with so much more now. Like, I hate to use the word sheeple, but we're like sheeple.
Well, people don't know, and they're not as well informed now as they were then. And frankly, the propaganda and disinformation campaigns of various federal agencies are a lot more sophisticated. So it's easier to downplay this shit. But trust me, if people really knew what was going on, there'd be revolution in the streets.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not calling for violence, but if people could rise up and peacefully replace our government with limited government people who respect the rule of law and individual liberty in markets, that'd be definitely a move in the right direction. And then separate government from a lot of functions. Like the federal government should not, in my opinion, should not be involved in education, shouldn't be involved in healthcare.
Nope.
Shouldn't be involved in relating itself to the Federal Reserve and printing money to pay for debt. Like, if we go to war, we should raise money from the American people to pay for the war. We shouldn't be borrowing money from China and Saudi Arabia and Japan to pay for whatever we want to pay for, including our wars.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is a fascinating part of your history and skill set. This is part of what I think makes you such a fascinating Renaissance man. So let's move away from the policy conversation, Michael.
Sure.
Let's talk about your other professional pursuits. I'd love for you to talk a bit about SEAL Fit, what got you involved in that,
Sure.
and how all that came about.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, we can also talk about the PPS work too at some point if you're interested. So SEAL Fit, 2009, my wife at the time said, what do you want to do for your 40th birthday? I was 39. I think she was expecting me to say, oh, go to the Caribbean and hang out at the beach somewhere and do something. And because of the work I've been doing, I've been tracking the SEALs and stuff. I'm like, oh, I want to do this. And what I'm pointing to is Commander Mark Devine of SEAL Fit had two programs. I'm like, this is the programs that I want to do. One was called the 3-week SOF Academy. It was closer to 4 weeks, but it was 3 weeks SOF Academy. And it's a pre-BUDS training program. It's for young men who want to go Navy Special Warfare. I was 39. I wasn't going Navy Special Warfare, but I'm like, that would be awesome. That's a way to test myself and see what I'm capable of. So I'm like, I want to do that. And then you finish it off with called Kokoro Camp. Kokoro Camp is a Japanese term. It means indomitable spirit or heart-mind integration. It's modeled after Hell Week. It's 50 hours instead of 5 full days. But you don't sleep, and you just go from one evolution to the other, from the ocean to the beach to the mountains to the grinder. I mean, they give you a chance to eat, but you're not sleeping. You're literally training the whole time. And I'm like, I want to do that too. So like that was my birthday present. So I spent literally a month there. It was the best time. At the time I missed my wife at the time, but cause she's like, oh, go for it. I'm like, cool. So she stayed home and I was on the West Coast. And we were up training by 5:20 every morning. And we finished training most nights around 7:30 or so. There's a couple nights around 1 o'clock in the morning, they wake us up and make us go to the ocean and do crazy shit. But, so that was 3 weeks of that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, we did the Kokoro Camp, the 50-hour non-sleep training evolutions. Yeah. And so I successfully completed that. I really connected really deeply with Mark. He was a great dude. He really liked me. And a year later, he calls me up and he's like, hey, I want to take, he didn't say, hey, I say, hey. He said, I want to take what we do for young men. Well, let me step back. So 5 of the guys I did the 3-week SOF Academy with got their trident. So they're now SEALs. One actually is retiring, which is really cool.
Wow.
Awesome. It makes me feel kind of old, like, oh my God. But so he called me up. He's like, I want to take what we do in that month. I want to scale it for a larger audience because not everyone is 22 and a male who wants to go Navy Special Warfare or the Army or Air Force or a Marine version of the same. I said, cool. So he brought me on board and we created what's called the Unbeatable Mind Academy. And it's a 12-month program that works on 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and Kokoro or spirit. And it's a developmental program over the year. And then there's an advanced program too. So put all our time and effort into building it, launching it, running it. It was awesome. And then he's like, I want to build out an inner circle or a mastermind group. So he brought me on board to run that as well. He brought me on board to help launch, co-lead, and then lead a coach and training program based on the Unbeatable Mind Academy. We did summits every year. I brought in to help build out the summits and all that kind of stuff. You interviewed Chris Smith, I know.
Yeah.
And I was literally just talking about him yesterday because for one of the summits, he was the MC. Nice. He's a dynamic, fun, loving dude.
Yeah,
he's a great MC. Awesome. And so one of my roles for the summit was not only getting speakers like a Ben Greenfield or Dominique, what's Dominique's last name? Some of the well-known people who come and speak at our events, but also to structure the event itself, including hey, Chris, you're speaking here. Here's the introduction. Here's who you're introducing. I laid all that stuff out. And Chris would just F with me the whole time, like pretend like he didn't know what I was talking about, that kind of stuff, which is, it sucked at the time, but it's really funny. And even Mark called me one time. He's like, hey, he didn't say, hey, I keep saying, hey. He's like, I'm at the hotel and I don't see anyone. I'm like, what do you mean you don't see anyone? There's like 1,000 people here. How can you not see the people? Like, they're literally right here. And he's supposed to be on stage in like 30 minutes. And he's like, I don't see anyone. He's like, I'm at so-and-so hotel. I'm like, holy moly, you're at the wrong hotel. Holy shit, you need to get over here. And there's like a 30-minute drive, and he was going to make it on time. And I was kind of freaking out because I'm responsible for like the whole thing. And then I hear him laughing, but not on the phone, but from around the corner. So Mark and Chris like to mess with me. It was pretty funny. Not at the time, but retrospectively, it's kind of funny. So that was kind of my story with SealFit. First doing their programs, then teaching and running some of their programs for them.
I got to tell you, SealFit is an iconic organization, and what they brought out into the marketplace was pretty darn awesome and unique. And to me, it's amazing that you've been involved with policy work at the highest levels. You've been involved with bringing SealFit to the world. I think that's super califragilistic cool. So
very fortunate. Yeah.
God is good, brother. God is good. So let's talk about the other stuff you want to talk about. You said that the PPSG work, is that what you called it?
Well, PPS, Personal Protection Specialist. And
right.
It kind of speaks to, so I did some of that work. The last job I did was protecting an ambassador. It's kind of really interesting. But the reason I brought that up, because it fits into the policy work. And let me explain how it. So I was in the policy work, and you're a Fourth Amendment guy, you're civil libertarian, privacy rights. And I'd be on the Hill talking to members of Congress or their staff, and I'd be Fourth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fourth Amendment. And except for some libertarians on the left and the right, most people didn't care. They're like, yeah, but security. I'm like, okay. They're not going to buy my arguments, although they should as an American who believes in the Constitution, my arguments. So I'm like, I need to understand their way of thinking about security so I can address it from their perspective. And it's like, what can I do? And I'm not going to retire for 10 years and join the government and then come back. So I'm like, here's what I can do. So I started taking classes. I took some classes on counterterrorism with former Mossad guys. It was a brilliant class. I learned a lot. Those kind of things, just to start thinking about security. And one of the things I thought about was like, I'll become a PPS. So I can think about like personal protection, group protection, how to protect buildings, peoples, institutions, those kind of things. So I Executive Protection Institute, I did their training, got certified in the state of Virginia, started working in that space. But originally only because I wanted to understand security. But it's kind of a fun job, so I did it for a little while anyways. But it's really to fulfill my interest in my policy work. And I also became a PI too, because I want to understand like how to do that kind of work too, because that's like investigating people. So I did that as well.
So dude, policy man, SealFit, personal protection specialist, aka a high-level bodyguard, and private investigator, like Thomas Magnum, man. You were like Magnum PI.
Yeah, where's my TC and who's the other guy?
Rick and TC.
Rick and TC.
Orville.
Exactly. That's awesome. Yeah, where's my buddy with the helicopter?
There you go, man. And on top of that, you have a deep background in, marriage and family therapy, and also in doing psychology level coaching for people. So let's get into some of that.
Yeah, sure. So there's 3 areas that I've been working in for almost 30 years now. Working with individuals, working with couples, and running groups. And about my most recent men's group, I co-lead with JC Click. He's a former Army Ranger. Yep. It's called Resilience Optimized. I can walk you through what resilience means to us, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, you should.
Resilience 2.0. Yeah, so we 6-month cohort ends in October. We start a new cohort in October. And our basic intention, and it was fun doing the pre-interviews with our possible members, because JC as an Army Ranger can say these things more than I can. But we're like, they'd be like, what's Resilience 2.0? And we're like, well, let's explain what Resilience 1.0 is. Then we can give the distinctions between the two. 1.0 is like the Jocko Willink. I love him. He's a great dude. I love his work. You wake up at 4:30 in the morning, you lift heavy ass weight, and you feel good about yourself. That's awesome. Discipline equals freedom. Awesome. Or like a David Goggins, like you run 100 miles before breakfast. Cool. That's awesome. Like, really push yourself. We think that's important, but that's not enough. That's not enough. Being physically capable as a man, you need to be physically capable and strong as a man. For us, resilience has other meanings, and this is the 2.0, and it expresses itself in 3 different areas. One is, can a man sit with his own experience without seeking distraction? A lot of people don't like how they feel, think, and sense things. And what they do is they go to porn, they go to drugs, they go to alcohol, they work extra, they work out extra. Like, they do things to distract themselves from their own experience. So we want to help them build resilience and sitting with their own experience, like not running away from their own experience, their own feelings, their own thoughts by distracting themselves. So that's one area. The other is like, how do you show up for your spouse? Are you resilient enough to be open to what she needs in the moment versus what you think she might need to make you feel better about how she's feeling? So a lot of guys like, I want to fix her because I feel uncomfortable with her being messy. I'm allowed to say that. My female friends have told me I can say messy. Women can get messy. The feminine can be messy. Men don't necessarily like that, and they want to fix it. They want to shut that down. We're like, no, like to be resilient is to be open to and hold the space for your girl, your woman, how she's showing up in that very moment, and to find out what she actually might need from you. Sometimes she might need your counsel. She might want you to help her solve her problems. Sometimes she just wants to complain. Sometimes she just wants you to listen. Whatever it is, like get out of your own way and be there for her as she needs you. So that's a way of being resilient for another human being. And then the third area is like, we live in a VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous, changing all the time. God knows what tomorrow's going to bring, let alone 5 minutes from now. What if your community requires you to step up and be a leader? Are you capable of doing so? So we are training our men to be leaders in their community. And the community literally could be their family, their literally their physical community, their workspace, their nation state. Like the size, we don't know. We don't know what's going to be called forth from our men. But we want our men to be capable leaders. For them to be capable leaders, they need to be able to manage themselves. They need to be strong, capable, heart-driven, like the light warriors, like Mark would say, that kind of thing. Unmoved by whatever's happening around them. They're not going to collapse and get scared and run away or whatever some people might do. Like they're willing to be front-side focused, and as we might say, a SEAL fit, run towards a gunfire. Not literally necessarily, but run towards the problem to solve it. That's what JC and I are doing in our men's group.
So yeah, JC, we got to get JC on the Sovereign Man podcast. Let's make that happen. Like I'd like to do a one-on-one with him as well as the panel that we talked about. But what you're doing with your cohort's powerful, and I think it's awesome that you want to run groups like this. And I got to tell you, I've been giving some thought about, like I run a men's group as well, about doing specific level programs within that umbrella. Like one thing that I ran a while ago was a business mastermind for men called Battle Brothers. Cool. These were men, each of whom were at least 7-figure earners that wanted to be complete men. They wanted to grow their business. They wanted to get in the best shape of their life. They wanted to do that. And I've been thinking, I'd love to run a mastermind like that, like a complete man mastermind, maybe a dozen men that are a part of it. They all got to be at a certain level business-wise. They all need to want to get in the best shape of their lives. I'm not interested in anybody who doesn't want to take that on and become physically capable, as you would put it. And they also got to want to be coached to learn to be good with their woman inside their relationship. So these are the 3 things that came into my mind, and I'd like to make that happen. I mean, I've got other things I'm doing right now. Mark and I have our new book coming out.
That's right. That's awesome.
We just got the draft back from the layout and cover guy. It looks pretty good. There's still some typos we got to get cleaned up, so that might take another few days. But I got to tell you, that's exciting. That's powerful. And I love that you do that kind of group work. Let's talk now about your couples work, because I think that's awesome and powerful as well.
Yeah, couples and individuals. And let me just share with you, because you know this, but your listening audience might be interested in this. Will Ravello, I believe, was a guest on your podcast as well. Former Army Special Forces, former SWAT commander from the San Francisco Bay Area. He and I are launching a tactical fitness men's group in the new year. And that's going to include like unarmed combat, close quarters combat, survival training, tactical medicine, as well as group process like a mastermind and individual coaching. So like I'm in 100% agreement the importance to our men. There's different vehicles for it. My vehicle with Will, or my vehicle with JC, your vehicle with your men's group. Men need this kind of stuff.
They do.
So that's coming out in the new year. With couples,
Love it.
I love couples because when I work with an individual and he or she shares with me about their partner, I only get their mental representation of their partner. When the partner's in the room with us, like when they're both together, you can't hide. Like body language, energetics, facial expression, temperature, breath patterns, like they can pretend like everything is okay, but you can just tell by the way they're showing up physically that there's issues. So I watch that really carefully because I'm trained somatically. So my work with couples has three basic components to it. One is around agreements. We want to work through what are the agreements around how we deal with whatever, conflict as an example. And we get really granular and detailed, like how we want to deal with particular types of conflict. Because most people have conflict styles. Some people run away, either physically or internally. Some people become hyper aggressive. And there's various ways that people interact with each other. And if they're coming to me, they're having the recognition, like what we've been doing is not working. So we need a new way of organizing and operating together. So we work on a new agreement. It's not enough, because if it was enough, then they could probably talk about it on their own and come to a conclusion and live into it. But what happens is they might cognitively agree this is a great way of dealing with conflict, but once they're spun up or spinning out of control, it's hard for them to remember what they agreed to, and their old patterns emerge, and they do whatever they do, escape, run, fight, whatever it is. So like, okay, so the other two pieces of it are like, I work with the individuals on teaching them how to manage their nervous system so they can learn, very similar to the resilience stuff I just shared with you, they learn to remain calm, cool, and centered. Operating from their heart, they take care of themselves, they take care of their partner, but they're operating from this really centered place. And that takes some time to build because, they most likely for the last 30, 40, 50 years have not done that. So, it takes some time to learn to manage the nervous system, also evolve their thinking and ability to show up differently. And then there's that's the first, so that's the middle piece. That's teaching people how to evolve, adapt, learn, and be more resilient inside themselves. And the other piece of that too is like co-regulate. I teach couples how to be together in such a way that they co-regulate each other. So for instance, if one person shows up and they're dysregulated because they've had a really hard day, what can the other person do to help that person re-regulate, get themselves calm, cool, centered, felt loved, cared, and connected? So there's various practices that I teach that they can do together so they can either help the other person re-regulate themselves or start themselves in a fresh, kind of grounded, loving, caring way to engage in a conversation. Because if you show up to a conversation with your partner that's a crucial conversation and you're kind of already spinning out of control, that's not really helpful because you're probably just going to spin completely out of control and set your partner off. So those are kind of generally speaking, three different pillars of my work with couples. And I love couple work because I love to see people like open up their hearts, their heart armor drops, they connect in deeper ways. They're more playful, they're more fun, they're more adventuresome, more sensual. So that's kind of my couples work.
Dude, like to me, what's really impressive about you in the realm of thought leadership is that you have operated at the highest levels in so many different, what we call clusters, right? Like you were at the thought leader training that we did, and there's a variety of, like, a thought leader doesn't have to just be an expert in one thing. You can be an expert in multiple things. And it's important to actually develop your expertise in multiple areas because that makes you a more well-rounded individual. And frankly, I think it's more in keeping with why you're here on earth, to learn a lot of things about a lot of different things and not just go, no, all I'm going to learn is how to do this one thing. But it's incredible how you're able to deliver results at the highest levels in so many multiple disciplines in areas of thought leadership and expertise. So let's talk about finally your individual work.
Sweet. Thank you. So, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I can't help but take a much more comprehensive approach to human development. So you can come to me as a client with a particular issue you want to work on, but my mind expands beyond that particular issue to help you develop the capacities, the skills, and the understanding to deal with whatever comes your way, not just that particular issue. And I've created a 4-pillar program. So I work on the physiological side of my clients, the psychological side of my clients, the social side, and the environmental side. And I help them dial all these things in so they can not only survive in their life, but they can thrive in their life. And I'll just give you a quick example on the physiological side. If you're not sleeping well, you're not dealing with stress, you're not living within a circadian 24-hour day-night cycle, you're not moving, you're not training, you're not eating well, you just feel like crap. It's hard to make the changes, psychological changes, if your physiology is off. So I'm like, I help my clients dial those things in, either gross or subtle levels, depending where they're at. And then the psychological piece is like, we work on cognition, emotions, energetics, spirituality, and somatics, or how they experience themselves in their own body. 2 of the pillars. And I can talk about the other 2 if you want.
Please do, brother. Yeah. That's why I brought you here, to delve deeply into all things Michael Ostrolenk's thought leadership.
Thanks, man. So the 3rd pillar is what I call the social pillar. And this has a couple different structures to it. One is we look at all the social ecology that someone's embedded in, their family, their friend network, their work spaces, any kind of social groups they're part of. And we evaluate them on how supportive they are of the individual in their growth and development. For instance, because if I have a male client comes to me and he's like, I'm really wanting to grow and learn and evolve and adapt, cool. And his wife is afraid of him doing that because she's afraid that he'll leave her if he grows. She's going to do either subtly or not so subtly everything she can do to shut him down, understandably so. A lot of people operate off of fear and insecurity. It's like, if we know that, then how do I help her understand what he's trying to do to benefit him and benefit her and get her to buy in? So we kind of explore these different relationships and how we can help get them either support this person or at least not be against the person's growth. It's one area of the social space. Another area of the social space is what I call communities of practice. What communities does this person need to be part of to help them grow and evolve, adapt, and learn? And it could be like, they need to join a CrossFit gym, a real CrossFit gym where there's a community, or a yoga studio where there's a real community. This is not just about working out, but getting in the community of people who are going to slap you on the butt and say, hey, good job. Where were you yesterday? I missed you in the workout. Those kind of things. Or a book club, intellectually, they want to grow. So they're part of a book club, or spiritually, go to church or synagogue or mosque, or join a Bible group, or whatever your trip is. What groups can you join that can help support you in a particular area of growth of your life? So we map those things out too. And then I will work with my clients, doctors, lawyers, psychologists, nutritionists, physical trainers, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page, heading in the right direction. And being so fortunate to have an amazing network for 30 years, I have people behind me that I can bring into the conversation. Hey, you need a functional medicine doctor, you need an epigenetics coach, you need a physical trainer. I got people. Hook you up so you can develop yourself in a multiplicity of areas of your life. I know enough to ask the right questions, but I'm not a nutritionist. So I'm not going to tell them what to eat. But I have one for you who'll do blood work and check things out, those kind of things. I can make recommendations on physical training because I've been in this space for 30 years. But I'm not going to program for you. It's something I'd have a Will come in and do, Chris Smith come in and do, those kind of things. So I have a team behind me if you need it. So that's kind of the way I consider the social space.
Well, I'm listening to you from the rubric of thought leadership, right? And in the world of thought leadership, Michael, we say that there's 3 things you need to do. And I learned this from a guy named Matt Church, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to think. Thinking is about coming up with basically good solutions for problems that people are facing. So in the areas of your expertise in thought leadership, you need to have thought deeply enough about the problems to be able to explain them well and to come up with good solutions. What's clear to me in the way that you describe is, brother, you've done the thinking part up the yazoo in every area you've ever gone into. You take a deep dive in there, you figure out what has to happen, and you come up with real world solutions. The other part is sell. You got to be able to sell your solutions to people who need them, because that's the only way you're going to actually be able to implement them in the real world. So that's the part where a lot of thought leaders fall down. They don't really embrace sales. They recoil at sales. They start to go, oh my God, this is, no, I'm not one of those pushy people. Somehow they want magically for the sales to appear. And to me, that's a big part of what a lot of top level thought leaders, a lot of top level coaches and experts fail at is sales, is selling, making sure that they actually have the opportunity to be of service to people. And then finally, it's deliver, which is to deliver the solutions you've created in such a way that you create fabulous first-rate results for people. And it strikes me that you've thought things through deeply and you know how to deliver in a way to get results. And when I met you, the sales part of it was where you were weak. And that's the part that you've been taking on and working on to become stronger at. And I'm listening to you describe everything you're doing. And I go, man, this dude is about 2 steps away from being the complete thought leader, the triple threat package of think, sell, and deliver. And when all of those line up at the same level, dude, that's when you are world renowned, you make a lot of money, and you make a big difference in the world.
Well, and you are gonna, you're not responsible for this, but me being part of your program, just for the listening audience to know, I did your 90-day program, and now I'm in your year-long program, which has helped me get on myself and my own self-limitations and self-talk and fears and insecurities to do exactly what you just said. And it's been a hell of an interesting process for me. And I joked, like with you and Teresa, I'll be like, man, I think I got it. And then one of you guys or Mark drops a bomb in the middle of it, and like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I'm back to square one. And like a couple weeks later, oh man, I got
not quite square one. Not quite square one. Let's be honest. It's not square one. Yeah. But it's definitely makes you tweak it so that you're in a position to get better. I mean, square one is way back there, man. You're like at square 35 or something, but you want to be at the square 100.
It'd be like on a Monday night, I'm like, man, I feel really confident. I got my messaging down. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then we do one of our team Zooms on Tuesday. I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. And you're right. It's not back to square one. It's much higher order place. But I'm like, this is awesome. Because I've been on the road for a year and a half, just traveling around. And I've been really fortunate to spend most of my time either with people at people's homes or hanging out with people who are coaches, therapists, or healers who challenge the F out of me all the time. So I like that approach to life 99% of the time. And I feel like I'm at home in your program.
Yeah.
You, who are very assertive, and Mark, who calls me out on the 20X stuff all the time. I'm like, oh man, this is effing awesome.
Yeah.
I gotta work harder.
I love it. All right, please go to the other aspects of this.
Yes, the last one's environmental. It has 2 pieces. I call it via negativa and via positiva. This is, you look at your environment, your home, your office, your transportation. You say, what do I need to add or remove to support new behaviors, new ways of being in the world? And I'll give you some examples of adding things. So I had a client who was training up for Kokoro camp, it's 50-hour camp, Mom After Hell week. And he was kind of weak on pull-ups. And he's trying to get us better on his pull-ups. I'm like, okay, via positiva, what can we add to your environment? So he got a pull-up bar that he put in his home office, the doorway between his home office and the rest of his house. My charge to him was every time you walk underneath that thing, you got to knock out pull-ups. So every time he got coffee, he walked the dogs, he went to the bathroom, had lunch, breakfast, or dinner, he had to do pull-ups. So by the end of the day, he's knocking out 20 extra pull-ups without thinking about it, which created the capacity for him to do really well, at Kokoro camp. But that just is a really small VA positive. Let's just add that to the environment. Another thing, I had a Christian client who was a Greek Orthodox Christian client, and he wanted to meditate and pray and spend a lot more time in the spiritual sense of spiritual work. So let's create a room for you that's iconic of who you want to become and supportive of these various practices. So you created a room, and obviously we have a cross and the Bible. The Greek Orthodox have some amazing books that some of the priests have written over the years that included that. There's other figures in there that kind of reminders of capacities or skills or things you want to build in himself. So okay, a meditation room. You don't have to be a Christian to have a meditation room. If you're Buddhist, you can put Buddhist stuff in the room, or Jewish, put Jewish stuff in the room. But you actually physically create the thing you need as a constant reminder and place to go to do it. Via negativa is what do we need to remove from the environment? And this is pretty simple. I would go through someone's house and look over there, refrigerator, pantry. Let's look at what you have. I'm on a low carb diet. okay, cool. Let's look in your refrigerator and look in your pantry. Man, there's a lot of effing carbs in there. It's like, so you're spending your time trying not to eat the food that's in your refrigerator or in their pantry. Why don't you not have it in your home so you're not thinking about not eating it? That's a waste of willpower points. And you're not tempted. Cool. Okay. So via negativa, let's remove stuff, or via positiva, let's add stuff. That's half of the environmental work I do with clients. Questions on that before I go to the second half?
No, man, that's fantastic. I like that a lot. I learned a lot from that. Things to put in that'll encourage good habits and things to take out that'll discourage bad ones.
Yeah. And I know you're a bodybuilder, you lift all the time. And I know Teresa's a runner. I had a client who's a runner, and here's the via positiva. I'm like, oh, cool. Where do you keep your running shoes? Oh, in the basement. Where's the basement compared to the front door? And he explained his home. I'm like, you're not going to see those shoes. You're not going to even think about running. Put all your stuff by the front door so you can just see it every time you walk into your living space, and you have to go run. It's not in and of itself enough. There's a whole bunch of other things that I work with the client on to turn something into a discipline and a habit. But that is just one example. Like, if it's not in front of you and easily accessible, most people tend to be kind of lazy, and they're going to forget about it, out of sight, out of mind. So like, those are the kind of things you can add in. On the other side of the environmental piece is also asking the question, the stuff I'm using for cleaning or cosmetics or whatever, is it conducive to human health or detracting from human health? And unfortunately, a lot of the products people use, whether to clean their homes or to cosmetics or hair stuff, whatever, is actually detrimental, neurotoxic, carcinogenic. So like, start thinking about those things and replacing them with at least neutral things, or even some things that can be positive towards your own health and well-being. So that's another piece of the environmental piece.
That's fantastic, brother. I like it. That's really, really smart. Really, really smart. Okay, brother.
I'll circle back real quickly to couples too. There are ways to organize your home as a couple that can support more romance and connection. And basic questions I would ask is, do you play music? Oh, we don't play music. Well, do you have any musical devices in your home? Yeah, but they're not in the kitchen while we're making dinner. Okay, cool. Here's an environmental thing. Get your iPhone, get a little stereo, and play some romantic, whatever is meaningful to you. I can tell you what the romantic music is. Have in the background. So when you guys are cooking together, maybe one of you wants to grab the other person, do a little kissing or a little dancing, make it a little fun. And what I'll tell couples is, look at all activities of daily life, ADLs, activities of daily life, that we just do habitually, we don't think about, we're mindless about. How can you modify the environments and add some sensuality to them, so you make them more fun, playful, and a way to connect with your partner? And cooking with music and candlelight and that kind of stuff could be one way to influence the environment, to influence the mood, to have deeper connection with you and your partner.
Okay, so as your coach, I got some coaching for you. This is brilliant. I want you to make a series of 12 videos for couples about things like this, 1 minute, 2 minutes each, and start putting them out there on your social media feeds. How to bring more romance, more sensuality, more good old-fashioned sex into your relationship, and start doing a few of these for people and put them out there and say, hey, if your relationship could use a bit of a tune-up, jump on my calendar, give them like a little link. But I think you need to put 12 of these out there. This is really, really good stuff.
I'll take your challenge. You know how I do things. It's been said.
Challenge, man. 12 for couples. Put them out there. Let's roll. And I think this is great. I think this is really, really great.
Thanks, Nick.
Michael, this has been a spectacular conversation. So if someone's listening to this and they want to have a conversation with you, they want to learn more about you and the work you do, what's the best way?
Yeah, they can go to my website, Michael, Michael, the letter D as in David, D, Ostrolenk, Ostrolenk, michaeldostrolenk.com. And there's a way to communicate with me there. And I'm on social media too. If you want to find me on Instagram, Ostrolenk, Twitter, Ostrolenk. So you can DM me on those platforms as well.
Okay, great. We'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. So, Michael, we wrap things up in the Thought Leader Revolution by asking you, as the guest expert, and this is gonna challenge you to give us your top 3 expert action steps, bullet point form. So short, sweet, succinct. that you think my listener, as a thought leader, ought to take on to take their life, their business, how they get to operate in the world to the next level? What say you? Go.
Fantastic. So the first one I'll say is sleep. You need to dial in your sleep. This is bullshit that people can think. I only need 5 hours of sleep at night. You can increase your rates of diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and all kinds of cognitive decline.
Yeah.
You'll be able to be more performative, more effective, more efficient if you actually get the kind of sleep you actually need. Deep, restful sleep. Dial in your sleep. If you need help, talk to a functional medicine doctor, not a conventional medicine doctor, a functional medicine doctor who can help you with various nutritional supplements or whatever you might need to help get you onto a good path. Sleep is the first one. Second one, I'll be like Mark von User, be a light warrior, kindness. Anytime you have the opportunity, you see someone who might need your help, and this could be the simplest things and the biggest things, help them. You never know, the smallest action you take for someone, might be small to you, could literally save their lives. And I love the stories that I hear of, like, for instance, someone being kind to someone else, and that person was literally on their way to commit suicide. And because someone was kind to them, it opened their eyes and heart to the possibility that life could be different. And they did not kill themselves, and obviously they're still alive and doing well. So it's like, you just never know. And it doesn't even have to be someone suicidal. It's just something, you never know what the challenge is someone's facing at that very moment. So kindness matters. And, I put together Team Fudishin, which we do really cool, hard physical activities as a team together. So physicality is really important to me. So I would say you don't have to do like 50-mile go rucks or Spartan races or whatever it is, or like what you do, you crazy man. But daily training, and I'll call it integrated training, is important. You need to physically move your body, lift weights, do some cardio, ride the bike, run. I mean, figure out whatever your thing is. For me, integrated training is really important. So you want to do work capacity and stamina and endurance and strength building and all this. You want to hit all the different aspects of the human system as best as possible, but figure out what that is for you and stick to it every day, and get an accountability partner who's going to encourage you to strongly stick to it every day. It could be your spouse or a buddy. And it doesn't mean you have to train physically really hard 7 days a week. But 7 days a week, you should be doing something. It literally could be like on some recovery days, I'm doing some yoga. I'm doing some ability drills. I'm going for a long walk. I'm going for an easy bike ride. Cool. Move your body, because all most of us do is spend all our time in front of the computers, 8-10 hours a day, or in the car in traffic. And that's so detrimental to human health and well-being. So move, 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 move.
I love it, man. These are 3 awesome expert action steps. Michael Ostrolenk, brother, this was an awesome conversation. I am pumped, juiced, jazzed, and enthused as a result of this conversation. So, listener, Michael Ostrolenk is the real deal. Go to his website, michaeldostrolenk.com, to connect with him on social media. And if you like this interview, if you learned something from it, give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. When you give us likes, ratings, reviews, this helps us, get found more easily. It helps us with the algorithm. So do that. And this is on me. I need to have been asking for this a lot sooner from a lot more people, but this is important. So make sure that you do that. And if you enjoyed the conversation with Michael and you're curious about what he does and how it can be relevant to you, reach out to him and ask for a call. He's very easy to reach out to. In fact, we call him the king of the reach outs, because he does a lot of reach outs and he accepts a lot of reach outs. So there you go. That's what I have to say to you, listener. Make sure that you do that. Michael, brother, thanks for coming on the show. I really had a blast. It was fantastic.
I really appreciate you, Nikki, on so many fronts, and thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah, you bet, brother. And that wraps up another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. To find out more about today's incredible guest, the one, the only, the legendary Michael D. Ostrolenk, go to the show notes at thethoughtleaderrevolution.com, or wherever you happen to listen to this episode, be it iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Audible, YouTube, Rumble, or what have you. Until next time, bye-bye.
This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.